The story opens inside a nightmare where reality itself has turned against humanity. In Bird Box Barcelona, the world is no longer safe to look at, because the moment your eyes open to the truth, your mind collapses into instant madness and death. The unseen force is everywhere, yet nowhere, forcing humanity into a horrifying rule: survive, without sight. From the very first seconds, we are thrown into chaos, where abandoned streets of Barcelona are filled with silence, broken echoes, and the heavy fear of something invisible watching from beyond perception. We are introduced to Sebastián and a small group of survivors, each one carrying the same burden: fear of opening their eyes. They move through the ruined city like shadows, relying only on sound, touch, and fragmented memory to navigate a world they can no longer see. Every step becomes a gamble, every breath a risk, because even a single moment of curiosity can mean death. The tension builds as we realize that survival here is not about strength, but about discipline, about resisting the most natural human instinct: to see. This opening immediately raises chilling questions in the viewer's mind. What are these creatures that cannot be explained or fought? Why does looking at them destroy the human mind instead of the body? And most importantly, are they truly outside forces, or something that already exists within human perception itself? The film refuses to answer directly, instead trapping both characters and audience in the same terrifying uncertainty. As Sebastián moves through this blind world, we feel the psychological weight of isolation intensify. Every sound becomes meaningful, every silence becomes threatening. Trust becomes the only weapon, yet trust is also the easiest thing to break. This section establishes not just the rules of survival, but the emotional prison of the story, where fear is constant, vision is forbidden, and the unknown is more powerful than any physical enemy ever could be. Broken Minds, Sebastián and the Psychology of Fear. As the story deepens, the real horror of Bird Box Barcelona begins to shift away from what cannot be seen, and moves directly into the human mind. This is where Sebastián's emotional transformation takes center stage. Once a survivor trying to adapt, he slowly becomes something far more tragic: a man consumed not by the creatures outside, but by the war happening inside his own thoughts. His grief is not silent. It grows, distorts, and eventually begins to reshape his perception of reality itself. After losing everything that once gave his life meaning, Sebastián's mind starts to fracture in subtle but devastating ways. Every memory becomes painful. Every silence feels like judgment. And every unseen sound outside begins to feel personal, as if the world itself is speaking directly to his guilt. The film suggests a terrifying idea here, that trauma doesn't just hurt the mind, it rewrites it. And in Sebastián's case, grief becomes the true origin of horror, more dangerous than any invisible force roaming the streets of Barcelona. As his psychological state deteriorates, we begin to question whether the creatures are truly external beings or reflections of something far deeper. The film blurs this boundary intentionally, suggesting that the monsters may represent emotional collapse, manifestations of fear, regret, and human weakness given form through perception. Sebastián's behavior becomes unpredictable, not because of physical danger, but because his mind is losing the ability to distinguish truth from illusion. This part reveals a chilling concept: fear does not simply destroy society, it reprograms it. As civilization collapses outside, Sebastián's inner world collapses even faster. His thoughts become louder than reality, his emotions more powerful than logic. And in that breakdown, we begin to see the real message of the film. The most terrifying monster is not what hides in darkness, but what darkness creates. Hidden symbols, what the creatures really represent. As the mystery deepens, Bird Box Barcelona stops being just a survival horror story and transforms into a layered psychological puzzle filled with hidden symbols and unsettling meaning. This section pulls viewers into the idea that the creatures may never have been simple physical entities. Instead, they might represent something far more abstract and terrifying: the collapse of human perception itself. Every visual detail in the film begins to feel intentional, like a coded message hidden inside chaos. One of the strongest symbolic contrasts in the story is the battle between blindness and false sight. Characters are forced to remain blindfolded to survive, yet the real danger seems to come from seeing too much truth. This raises a disturbing paradox. What if vision itself is unreliable? What if the human mind cannot handle reality as it truly is? The film suggests that sight is not clarity, but vulnerability, and that not seeing may actually be the only form of protection left. Religious imagery also plays a powerful role in this interpretation. Throughout the ruins of Barcelona, symbols of faith appear in broken churches, silent prayers, and moments where characters surrender control to something greater than themselves. But the film blurs the line between salvation and danger, suggesting that belief can either protect the mind or completely distort it. Faith becomes both a shield and a weakness, depending on how the mind interprets fear. Another key element is the use of distorted reflections, broken glass, shattered mirrors, and unstable visual environments that hint at reality itself being fractured. These visuals subtly imply that what characters see might not be external monsters, but internal projections shaped by trauma, guilt, and psychological collapse. The creatures, in this reading, are not invaders, they are mirrors of human darkness made visible through perception. The turning point, when survival becomes surrender. At this stage of Bird Box Barcelona, the story breaks its own rules and plunges into pure psychological chaos. What once felt like a desperate fight for survival now transforms into something far more disturbing, an internal collapse where fear no longer just threatens life, but actively rewrites choice itself. Sebastián, once a broken survivor fighting against grief, reaches his final emotional breaking point, and his actions begin to blur the terrifying line between victim and weapon of destruction. The survivors start noticing something horrifying. Not all encounters with the unseen force lead to instant death. Some visions don't kill at all, they convince. They slowly erode resistance, whispering into the cracks of human emotion until surrender feels like the only escape. This changes everything. The threat is no longer immediate violence, but psychological erosion, an invisible persuasion that turns fear into acceptance. Survival is no longer about running or hiding, it becomes about resisting your own mind. Sebastián's breakdown becomes the center of this turning point. His grief, guilt, and fractured perception evolve into something unpredictable. He is no longer fully a victim, yet not entirely in control either. His actions mirror the very influence of the creatures themselves, as if his emotional wounds have become a gateway for the same force infecting others. This creates a terrifying duality. He is both affected by the horror and unknowingly spreading it. As the tension rises, the survivors realize a disturbing truth: the greatest danger may not be the creatures outside, but the emotional weaknesses within themselves. Fear, despair, and loneliness become the real battlefield. The film suggests that the unseen force does not need to destroy bodies, it only needs to weaken the mind until humans destroy their own will to survive. This point, the story stops being about escape and becomes a psychological war. Legacy of Fear, the theory that changes everything. In its final legacy, Bird Box Barcelona becomes more than horror, it becomes a psychological theory of human fear. Fans question whether the creatures are external invaders or awakenings of buried human consciousness. Blindness turns into a symbol of denial, not safety. With sound, silence, and unseen terror, the film traps viewers in the same fear as its characters. It ends with one haunting question: is ignorance the only true survival? Subscribe my channel for more interesting and knowledgeful videos.